Welcome everyone to another Showtime Power Hour. Tonight's topic will be virtual platforms and how do you choose one? We have a very special presenter giving us this information tonight. Drew Jensen has been a longtime member of Showtime Toastmasters and one of our tech experts, so he's highly qualified for this presentation. You will also have two moderators, but myself, you'll see me as your Showtime host, Trish B, and Bobby O'Connell, who you'll see as the co-host. All right, we will be your moderators for the evening. We'll be monitoring the chat, helping catch Drew's attention when necessary, and we'll be watching for everyone to keep their lines muted. If we choose to mute your line for you, you may have difficulty unmuting, so best to manage those controls yourself. With that being said, let's turn control of this presentation over to our featured presenter, Mr. Jensen. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Trish, and thank you everyone for joining today. I'm happy to be here, excited to be here, and happy to be presenting this topic to you on the virtual platforms in our current environment. It's so important for us as Toastmasters to be able to continue our programs virtually, and I have some information that I think you'll find very useful and helpful tonight. I'm going to start with just a little bit of introduction and some considerations that I wanted to cover just to get started in this particular topic. And then I'm going to talk about specific features of some of the online tool capabilities so that you have a good understanding of what features are available when you're evaluating a particular tool, what features you should be looking for. And then I'll go into the specific tools themselves and cover a few of the most prominent tools, some of which are free, but also have some limitations, as well as some of the top paid tools. And then if we have time, I'll answer questions that you might have about anything. But as we're going through the content, feel free to stop and ask me questions as we go through, either entering questions into the chat or just unmuting yourself and jumping in and asking questions. So some things to think about. Since March, since we've been in this pandemic situation, the online video meeting capabilities are more competitive than ever. We've seen tremendous changes in features and functionality and even costs of some of these online meeting tools. And so it's important to stay abreast of what's happening in the market, what's happening with these different tools. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the content. Something else is there's been many improvements that are made. Obviously, this has become very important in business, important for even just personal social interaction. And the companies that produce these tools have made a lot of improvements in the past several months in their tools. And the other thing is that there's tons of tools out there. There's dozens of available options. I'm going to talk about a few of the more popular options, but if you just Google online video tools, you'll see that there's dozens of them that are out there that are available for use, and at a variety of cost points, from free tools to very low cost tools to some fairly expensive ones. So I'll talk about a few of these, but it's just important to note that you should do your due diligence and understand what your needs are and understand what your budget is, and that will help you to be able to select the best tool for online meetings. I wanted to point this out too. We did a workshop several months ago, and I brought this up as well in that workshop because it's important to understand when we're talking about online meetings, there's sometimes different perceptions of what the online meetings are. And so I identified these as two different types of online meetings. The first type, or type 1, is video conferencing. And this is where you have typically a video conferencing capability. People are in a meeting room, but joining from either another meeting room or joining from their individual computers in an isolated location. And this was actually a methodology that was available to Toastmasters and Toastmaster clubs since 2015. And the rule that Toastmasters International had was you could have these type of online meetings with video conferencing capabilities, but not more than 50% online attendance. The second type is a completely online meeting, 100% online attendance, where every person attending is typically in an individual isolated location and joining through the online meeting tool. This previously was only available to those specifically designated online clubs that were in the U district or the undistricted, not undistracted. They're undistricted. I just noticed that typo there. They were the undistricted clubs. But since the pandemic environment, this is currently how most clubs are operating that are continuing to actively hold meetings, is using these online meeting tools. So today I'm going to focus primarily on that type 2 type of tool and online meeting capability. So let's talk about some of the features of these online tools. The first feature that's really important to understand is the different views that you have in these online meeting tools. And most of the tools, when you come into the tool, we were just talking about this before the recording started, is you have this active speaker view. And that's usually the person who's speaking is most prominently displayed on your screen. And as other people speak, the view will switch to those particular people. So you're always seeing in a large view who the current speaker is. But we also have what we call the grid or gallery view. Depending on which tool you're using, they have different names for it, but they're typically have a similar functionality where you can see all attendees' videos all at once, and usually in some kind of grid format. It's important to note when you're looking at these tools, some of them have a limited number of videos which they can display all at once. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the tools of the tool companies have improved this over the last several months. So most of them will display 25, sometimes up to 30 videos within their grid view. So they have quite a few that they can display at one time on one screen. Something else that I wanted to talk about too that's important to understand when you're thinking of views is this idea of pinning. And again, different tools may call it something a little bit different, but what it does is it allows you to make one video the one that's displayed, even if that person isn't speaking. And why I bring this up is from a Toastmasters perspective, it can be very useful. For example, if you're watching someone give a presentation and you are evaluating their presentation, you want to be watching them the entire time, and you don't want an active speaker view to potentially switch because somebody forgets to mute and coughs into their microphone and have it switch off of the view. So what you can do is pin their video so that their video is always displayed, even if there's other stray noises in the meeting. Another great use for this is if you're giving a presentation and you have a timer, and the timer is physically displaying on their video screen the green, yellow, red timing indicators. You can pin their video as you're giving the presentation. You won't be able to see the rest of the audience, but you'll see that timer and you'll be able to see their timing indication. So just a couple useful ways in which you can use pinning, particularly for Toastmasters meetings. And so it's an important feature when you're thinking about which tool to use to ensure that the tool has that type of capability. And most of the tools that I'm talking about today do have that pinning capability. And I'll continue to just pause briefly after each slide in case there's questions that folks want to interject. The next feature that I wanted to talk about is screen sharing. And again, this is a fairly common feature, but it's important to understand the capabilities of the tool. Most have a default screen share, and what that does, as you can see on the left, is it prominently displays the screen that's being shared, and then you usually will have a small strip either at the top or off to the side of people's videos. Some of the tools, particularly like the tool we're using right now, Zoom, has what they call a side-by-side view, which means that you can actually split the screen and be able to resize the view of the shared screen, as well as resize and see different views of the participants' videos. And so that's a nice feature if you're doing a lot of screen sharing, but also doing a lot of interactive collaboration or interactive presentations, and want to be able to see the rest of the audience. Another nice feature that not all the tools have, Zoom has this tool, but not all of them do it, is they call either a floating window or a pop-out window capability. And what that does is when you go to that mode, is it actually pulls out some of the other windows. So you separately see the shared screen window from the participants' videos, as well as maybe some of the other windows that might be displayed, such as the chat window, or if you have a participants window that has the list of participants, you can actually have those in different windows. And this is really useful, particularly if you are working in a multi-screen environment. So if you have multiple screens and you're presenting, you can sometimes do pop out, and you can move screens to different windows and be able to see the participants in one area, see the screens that are being shared in another area, as well as some of the other windows. So just another more advanced feature that's kind of handy. Was there a question?
Yes, before you move on, I believe we have a couple of questions. Tony, did you have a question? And Karen, I see you. You'll be next.
Yes, I had a question, but it was on the previous. We can wait until the end if you want to. It was on the previous slides.
I can answer it now.
Okay. The question is, can you, as a host, determine what view the audience will see? Can you put only speaker's view or gallery view?
Not typically. The host, usually the tools themselves allow each participant to customize the view themselves. Okay. And so you can't do that. Now, I would say the exception to that is if you have a webinar capability in the tool that you're using. So some of the tools like Zoom or WebEx, GoToMeeting have a special webinar capability, right, which then the users don't have a lot of control, and you control what they see as the host. But in the webinar capability, you typically also don't see people's videos. You only see the presenters or the host's video screens.
Right. Okay.
That's probably the one exception. And there's usually additional cost to have that webinar capability.
Yeah. Yeah, it's $400 per year or something like that.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. The other question I have relates to this next slide, and that is, you were talking about floating and pop out. Does that include also when you use a background and you use a presentation as a background?
So the background capabilities are usually just within your window itself.
Yeah. No, what I mean is, I've seen presentations done using the presentation as a background. Mm-hmm. They look fabulous, but I haven't been able to learn how to do it. So I don't know if you have any.
It's a new feature. Are you familiar with it, Drew?
No, I'm not.
Okay, it's a new feature in Zoom. I think Zoom 5.3, I think is what you have to have. But what it does is when you share, there's an advanced tab that allows you to share your slides as your background then. And it doesn't allow you to do any pop-outs or anything like that, but you have to, it's part of the act of sharing your presentation. But you
Right.
do have to go to the advanced tab.
Yeah.
All right.
And then does it display your video in front? Like you see yourself in front of your slides?
It displays your slides behind you like your background would. And it
But like in
allows
a
you
sub box.
to, no, it takes the whole screen, but it then takes you and puts you in a smaller portion of the frame, and you can move where you are displayed on the frame.
Right.
So most people just leave it in the default, lower corner and adjust their template accordingly. But you can resize your image, and you can reposition your image if you choose to.
Yeah. And that's one of the, as I was mentioning, one of the new features.
Yes.
I haven't even actually seen that feature myself.
We'll demonstrate it in an upcoming meeting for you, Tony. And I think Karen had a quick question.
Yeah, now I have two questions.
Oh,
Well, the advanced feature that you were just talking about, is that something you set up in the advanced features prior to, or can you do it?
no,
It's right
it's a new feature of sharing that Zoom has deployed.
there. Okay. Second,
I think one of the requirements is that you use a green background to be able to be effective. I tried
no.
it. It didn't work well for me.
Okay, no, because I do it without a green screen and it works fine. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay.
maybe I'll call you and you can help.
Like I said, we'll demo it in a meeting coming up soon.
Okay.
All right, Karen, you had a second question, Karen?
I'm so comfortable asking you guys questions.
Yeah, no, sure.
I don't get it what the float or the pop out is exactly. I mean, I know that if you click on what part chat, you can have another window. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. So if you just
Can you demo?
I can't, because I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
So I can't really, you won't be able to see what I'm doing in Zoom itself. But usually if you click the chat function, you'll see it, at least in Zoom, you'll see it in a little area on the right hand side.
Right.
But if you do float or pop them out, they're in separate windows and you can move them around on your screen.
Okay.
So you could move the chat over to the left or to the upper right if you want, or you can move it, if you've got multi screens, you could move it to another screen so that you can see different parts of the presentation and the application on different screens.
Okay, thanks. Oh, that's an idea. I never thought about doing that. Okay, great.
So, Drew, can I add
Yes.
something here too? So when you have Zoom open, the default is to have, when you click on participants in chat, it automatically puts it side by side, attached to the display window or the gallery window. But if you have participants open, in the upper left corner of that box is a little drop down arrow, and one of the options is pop out. And then if you click that, it turns it into a separate window that you can move wherever you want on your screen.
Exactly.
And the same is true for chat. And then to get it back so that it's attached to your main screen, you use the little 3 dots on the bottom. And
breadcrumbs.
yeah, and then one of the options there is something like merge to main window or something like that.
Right. Right. And that's specific to Zoom. Other tools have similar types of functionality.
Okay, and that concludes our questions. Thank
Okay. Let's keep moving along. I wanted to point out video sharing as one feature that you might want to consider. And that's if, for example, I were not just sharing my screen, but actually sharing a video that was playing. you usually will set this up when you're starting to share your screen, and Zoom, for example, says optimize for sharing video. WebEx does the same type of thing. It allows you to select an optimization setting when you're sharing. And what it's doing is actually allowing you, first of all, to also share your computer audio over the screen. So it's not just sharing the audio from my microphone, but it's actually sharing what's being played from the video. And it also, most of the tools include some video encoding capability. So it really optimizes the screen for being able to share that video. So the videos play much smoother and they don't look choppy or blocky when they're playing. So if you think you're going to be potentially doing a lot of video sharing, that's something to consider, a feature that you might want to consider, and make sure that the tool that you're selecting has a video sharing option, an optimization option for video.
Yeah. Okay.
Chat is a standard feature that is pretty common across all of the tools. You can usually have a separate chat area, or as we said, pop out. This, you're seeing the example of what the pop out might look like in a GoToMeeting tool. And some of the additional capabilities, again, most of the tools provide these capabilities, but you just want to make sure if you need these capabilities, is you can do private chatting. So rather than just chatting to everyone in the meeting, you can select specifically who you want to chat with. This is really useful, particularly in Toastmasters meetings. For example, if you're say you're doing ballot counting or vote counting, and you want to send your vote for best table topic speaker to the ballot counter, you can do that through a private chat. So that's why I call that out. It's also sometimes important to have a capability for saving the logs, the chat logs. So you'll want to make sure if you think that you might want to save information that's being, if you're doing like one of these Power Hour workshops and you want to be able to save the chat correspondence, just make sure that that might be a feature that you might want to consider when you're looking at the different tools. Registration, I wanted to call out this feature as well. It's not all the tools provide a registration capability, but it's a nice, a little added security that you have for your sessions to make sure that people can't just arbitrarily jump in and join your session by clicking a link. And it allows you to ensure that you specifically have a person's name and their email address to be able to join your particular meeting, and they won't get a link to your meeting unless they actually register. So it adds a little bit of security. It also helps you to estimate attendance. So you can actually go in and say, oh, I can see who's registered to attend. Some of the additional capabilities that tools have, you can do, in some cases, if you have advanced tools and advanced features, you can do formed customization. And you can also sometimes include payment options so that they have to register and actually will go and link to something. For example, in this case, Zoom's can link to PayPal and collect a payment also for a registration. Just some other features. I just called some of these out just as considerations. They're not necessarily, in some cases, they're features you might want to use for Toastmasters, but some cases maybe not. But recording is also a really useful feature, particularly if you're doing things like these types of workshops and you want to record. When you're recording, you can usually, most of the tools will allow you to record to the cloud, and then you can go and download the recordings after the fact. You have to check the storage capabilities, so different levels of features and different levels of payment will give you different amounts of cloud-based storage for those videos. Or you can sometimes just record and then store locally onto your hard drive. It takes a little bit of time. Typically, your system will have to background process the video sometimes before you actually get that a video stored on your local hard drive. Polling is also an interesting feature. There's some cases where you might use it from a Toastmasters perspective. If you're wanting to use polling for ballot counting or vote counting, you could do that. If you're doing more interactive type discussions or sessions, you could set up some polls as well. Breakouts, again, a nice feature, a nice capability that a lot of these tools have. It allows you to identify groups of people to be moved into separate, isolated discussions, and people can be in those shorter discussions. Like we could say, okay, we're going to break out in pairs, and suddenly you would get moved into a meeting with just one other person, and you could have a collaboration there, and then the host could then set a time limit and then bring you back over after a certain time period. I don't know why or how you would use that in a Toastmaster session, but sometimes it's just a nice feature that some of the tools support and some don't support as well. Was there somebody that raised their hand that had a question?
I did. Is the polling breakout in the whiteboard in the advanced Zoom level, or is it in the basic level?
So the whiteboards and the annotation tools are available with the standard Pro account. And I believe they're probably also available even with the basic, like the free account, where you can get, there are some limitations in terms of attendance and in terms of how long your meeting can be for the free version, but I think you still have the full capabilities of breakouts and whiteboards and the annotation tools. Something else that's kind of handy that you probably heard Trish asking people to do before the recording started is being able to change your name and how it's displayed. That can be a very useful feature, and not all the tools support that capability. A lot of the tools, particularly if you do a registration, once you've put your name in there and you've registered, that's what your name is, and it doesn't allow you to do customizations like identify which club you're with, for example. There's also, as you saw, Connie just used, she raised her hand, and I saw, I got a little flash that said somebody raised their hand. So you have some of these other features like raising hand, being able to say yes or no, clapping, other notifications from participants. And so those are some other useful features that you can potentially use as well.
One more question. So I'm looking at the participants view, I guess, and I see my video off and my mic was muted, and then there's, I don't know if it's a cloud with a red button in it. Does that mean that it's being recorded? I've never seen something shaped like a little cloud with a red button.
Yeah, that's the indication that the meeting's being recorded, and that's again specific to Zoom. That's how Zoom displays it. Other tools display it in a little different way to give some indication, and it's just saying it's being recorded, and it's being recorded to the cloud.
Cool.
Okay. So that's some of the features and capabilities that you should be considering as you're looking at the various tools that you might potentially use. So let's get into some of the specific tools themselves and what's available. And again, there's dozens of them. I just picked some of the top ones that I'm familiar with, or that seem to be most prominent in the market and most prominently used. One of them, which has been around for a long time, is Skype. Skype is a free tool. It has some basic features for video collaboration, up to 50 people. It tends to be more of a consumer-oriented tool. Skype is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft uses Microsoft Teams for their enterprise type collaboration and video sharing capabilities, video collaboration capabilities. So in fact, Skype for Business is being replaced by Microsoft Teams. So but Skype's still around. Microsoft still seems to be investing in it, creating new features and capabilities. But again, it's very much geared towards personal use and the general consumers versus a more professional or business oriented usage model. And so that leads me into the other Microsoft tool, which is Microsoft Teams. You can download Teams and start utilizing Teams for free for up to 250 attendees in a meeting. Microsoft does have a group video collaboration, and I had a question mark here. It seems that because Microsoft's been investing more heavily in Microsoft Teams, my speculation is, and some of the anecdotal information that I've heard is, you get better performance in Microsoft Teams than you do with Skype, or at least that you do with Skype for Business. So in my experience, and some of the things that I've heard is the Microsoft's investing a little bit more in the performance capabilities of Microsoft Teams. One of the drawbacks with using Microsoft Teams, if you haven't used that or seen it or are familiar with it, it's really intended to be a collaboration tool. So it has a lot of other collaboration capabilities beyond just online meetings. So it has a lot of chat capabilities, offline chat capabilities, allow you to do file sharing type capabilities, and has a lot of other things which could be not necessarily needed for your particular application that you might have in hosting a Toastmasters meeting. And so it could be a little bit confusing to utilize Teams if you're just looking for a tool in order to conduct online Toastmasters meetings. But it is available. It is and it is freely available for people to use. Google Meet is the evolution of Google Hangouts. If folks remember, Hangout was the Google platform for doing video collaboration and video sharing. It does require, if you use Google Meet, it does require a Google account. So you have to have a Gmail or some other Google account. It has most of the basic functionality and allows you to host up to 100 attendees. It does have a 60-minute limit for the free version. So Google is actually starting to require a Google Workspace account if you want some of the more advanced features. And if you have a Google Workspace account, it can be quite expensive. It can be $8 per month per user. So it's really, Google's trying to direct this more towards enterprise utilization, where companies are using the full suite of Google Workspace and using Gmail and using their Google Drive and other things for the other applications for collaborating and doing business. And so they're really trying to position it more for an enterprise type utilization. But there is the freely version that's available, and you can use it for meetings up to 60 minutes. And the final tool I wanted to talk about is that it's not really well known, but I've used it in the past. It's called freeconferencecall.com, and it seems too good to be true, because they truly say, hey, this is an absolutely free video conferencing tool, has screen sharing. You can have up to 1,000 participants. It has all of the capabilities that you would expect, all of the basic capabilities that you would expect: screen sharing, chat, being able to record, for example. And they have this model of just pay us what you can, right? So they request basically donations for use of their tool, but it's very much sort of that open model, the open source model, the kind of Wikipedia type model where it's like, hey, we're just gonna, it's available for everybody to use, and we just ask for people to give us donations. The concern with this, and I haven't used it in a long time, I used to use Free Conference Call for their audio solution years ago. I haven't used their video solution lately, but I just wonder if it's a situation of you get what you pay for, right? If you're not paying for a tool and it's free, it's probably not going to have as much of the performance capabilities as some of the paid tools. But I don't know that for sure. It's just a speculation on my part. But it might be, if you're looking for a low cost or a free option for your Toastmasters meetings, that might be an interesting option to explore. It's freeconferencecall.com. Okay, so let's talk about some of the paid tools. And when I was looking at, well, which paid tools should I be talking about? I came across this study from Gartner. Gartner is an industry research company, and they have this thing that they call their magic quadrants, and they do magic quadrants for lots of different types of solutions. And they did a magic quadrant for meeting solutions, and they just updated it recently, just last month. And they assessed all these different enterprise level meeting tools, and they compared the number. They compared on the vertical scale their ability for the company to execute, like how well is the company executing in terms of developing and sustaining and maintaining those tools. And then they also, on the horizontal scale, identified the completeness, the capabilities of the tool themselves. And you can see in the leaders are Zoom, Cisco WebEx, and Microsoft Teams as more of an enterprise. I know we talked about that as a free option, but they also have an enterprise option that's quite expensive. I don't get into details on the enterprise option here, but I did want to talk a little bit about Zoom and WebEx. And then they also have some of the interesting ones in the challengers section. Of course, Google Meet is one of the challengers, and I mentioned that they're trying to position that more as an enterprise tool. Huawei is something that's available in China, so it's probably not something that we're going to be considering as a here in the U.S. or as a potential global option to use. But the other one is LogMeIn, and LogMeIn owns GoToMeeting, and so I wanted to just show you some information about Zoom, WebEx, and GoToMeeting, because those seem to be the top ones in the industry right now. So first, there's Zoom. Zoom's right now the leading industry solution. It's clearly being just taken the industry by storm over the last couple of years, and people are very enamored with the Zoom tool and using it. It seems to be known as a very intuitive solution and has the best ease of use for that, and it has a lot of advanced capabilities. We were talking about one of those earlier. The screen sharing as a background is a new advanced capability, but they also have capabilities like dual screen share, so you can have two people sharing a screen at the same time. And the floating windows is another one of the advanced capabilities. They do have a free option that you can host up to 100 participants. It has a 40-minute maximum. So after 40 minutes, basically your meeting abruptly ends. So, but you can also do unlimited one-on-one meetings. So it's a nice option if you're just using it as a video calling option. But as a paid option, Zoom just recently reduced their costs. So they were $180 per year or $15 a month. And they recently just reduced it to about $150 per year. And that's basically what you're seeing now. The environment we're using right now is the pro environment for Zoom. So you can host up to 100 participants. You have unlimited group meetings, social media streaming. You have a gigabyte of cloud storage for recording, and a lot of other nice advanced features that you have for Zoom. The next option that I wanted to talk about is WebEx. So this is Cisco's tool that they provide. It's slightly more expensive if you, I put the calculation here if you can't do math in your head very good, like I can't multiply in my head sometimes. So it's $162 per year, or basically $13.50 a month for their starter package, and that provides most of the features and capabilities that you're going to need. So it's a little bit more. It used to be less than Zoom. Now it's since Zoom's discounted their solution, it's a little bit higher in terms of cost. But WebEx is also known as having one of the best performing solutions. So they tend to really pride themselves on their performance, on making sure that the video performance is very smooth, the audio performance is very good, and it's just known for having a lot less glitchy problems than some of the other tools do. It can be a little bit more cumbersome to use. They have invested. I've been pretty impressed over the last 6 to 8 months, some of the features that they've added to WebEx, and some of the features that they've changed to make it a little bit more usable. So it is getting better, but still sometimes it has a lot of extra features and capabilities that sometimes are hard to understand how to use. So it can be a little bit more cumbersome than Zoom, which is very much more intuitive. And finally, the last one that I wanted to talk about was GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting, as you saw from Gartner's assessment, is one of the up and coming or one of the challenging tools. It's a little bit less expensive than some of the other top tier tools. So $10.20 a month, or roughly about $123 per year, is their professional tier. It has a little bit higher number of participants, so you can go up to 150 participants rather than 100. Not sure if that's that important for us as Toastmasters, unless we're going to be hosting really large events. You may be hosting a TLI event or something like that. We might be more interested in having more participants. It also has unlimited meeting times. Again, not super interesting because Zoom and WebEx allow you to have meetings up to 24 hours long, and GoToMeeting allows you to have an indefinite period of time. There's no time limit, but I don't know why you would have a meeting that long. So, but it is an interesting capability. The other thing that the GoToMeeting brings is they have very technically advanced video settings. So if you're really doing a lot with your video, you're doing a lot with video playback, and GoToMeeting has some really sophisticated settings and capabilities for video. Now, on the flip side, that can make it maybe a little bit more complicated, and it might be a little bit more sophisticated than people typically need. So it's just something to consider when you're selecting potential tools. All right, so I actually got through some of that pretty quickly. In conclusion, what I suggest is you just assess what you can afford. The tools that you pay for are going to have more features, they're going to have better security, and they're going to have better performance. But if you can't afford $150 or more a month, then take a look at some of these other free tools and just assess what you can afford and what kind of capability that you need for your Toastmasters meetings. I encourage you to research the tools for your needs. I just gave you kind of a snippet of some of the tools and the high level costs and high level features and capabilities, but all of these tools on their websites have very detailed listings of features and capabilities. And so I encourage you to look through and research which tools are going to best meet your needs, as potentially research some of the tools that we didn't even talk about today, because there's dozens of them that are available in the market. I also encourage you to try before you buy. So most of these tools have either a trial period or have free options, and I encourage you to try those out. If you're unfamiliar with using some of these tools, give it a try, see how those capabilities work for you in your Toastmasters meetings and your Toastmasters needs. And finally, I just encourage everybody, make a plan for doing online Toastmasters meetings. I know Showtime Toastmasters has been doing this for some time. We've been leading the charge even before this year, have been working on how we can add online meeting capabilities and develop ourselves and help understand the technologies around doing online meetings. But we're kind of in this situation where, at least for the time being, this is the new normal. And if we want to be holding and conducting Toastmasters meetings, this is the way that it's going to be done. And so I really encourage people to explore their options and consider how you can make your club meetings completely online meetings and continue to conduct Toastmasters meetings. And with that, I'll just open it up for questions. We did want to make sure that if folks prefer to discontinue the recording, we can kind of go offline a little bit and do a more informal Q&A. Or if folks want to jump in right now and want to have their question and feel it's important to have it on the recording, you're welcome to ask your questions now.
Cynthia, I have a question. In the data that's saved in the registration form, are you able to download it or export it out to follow up with the attendees later?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. Yes. So typically you are able to export that information. Sometimes I seem to recall Zoom maybe requires you to do more of a cut and paste. I don't.
Zoom is not exportable. You have to copy paste. Yeah.
Yeah, Zoom you have to copy and paste, but I think other tools do have an export capability for their registrations.
And quick follow up on the payment, is it through PayPal or is it through their HTTPS type connection thing?
I think it depends on the tool that you're using. I think the example I popped up was for Zoom, and it looks like Zoom has an ability to link to a PayPal and be able to include that as part of the registration. I don't know that we've ever used that with Showtime.
Okay.
We have not.
I can add something to that. You need a webinar account to be able to integrate the PayPal in Zoom. If you don't have a webinar, then you cannot integrate the two things. I tried that, I couldn't do it.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, you have to have the PayPal, and it costs $400 per year.
Yeah, the webinar account is a lot more expensive.
However, Tony, I'll also be advised you can have a standard pro account and add a webinar, one-time webinar for $40 a webinar.
Oh, okay.
So you don't have to sign up for a webinar account for an entire year. You can sign up for a pro account instead, and then pay for a webinar anytime you need to use the webinar.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you. That's fantastic. Yeah.
That's with the Zoom, you can do that? $40 for one time?
That's Zoom's current rate. Again,
Hey.
you always have to check the pricing.
Yeah, the pricing does fluctuate.
Yay. Good.
Yeah, but that's a nice option if you're not going to be regularly doing webinars and you're going to be charging for it. You could potentially recoup the cost. And the difference with webinar, again, is people will be able to see the hosts, but it won't be like these Zoom meetings where you see everyone. So the attendees won't have video, they won't have audio. The only way they can correspond with you usually is through the chat capability.
I think they can have audio. I've got a guy that I'm doing a webinar with right now, and it's Zoom. So we can hear each other. He can unmute all of us. We can talk, but we can't see each other.
That may be an option then in Zoom. I know some like WebEx and GoToMeeting. I've seen webinar capabilities, and usually the attendees don't have audio, but maybe there's a way to turn that on.
Yeah, the ones that I've been involved in, there's a portion of the audience that gets promoted to panelist, and then they can see and interact with one another, but the audience still cannot interact with the panel.
Right. Other than via chat.
Right.
Okay, I have one dumb question.
There are no dumb questions.
I think it's a dumb question. I haven't asked it ever before, but I'm going to ask. So like, so I have the pro account with Zoom. And here's my question. Usually when I save the recordings, because I use it a lot, I do, besides Toastmasters, I do online consultations with dog training clients. And then I'm always sending them the recording. But as far as saving it to the cloud, I like to save everything on Dropbox. So I save it to my computer and then I save it to Dropbox because I think the cloud, I can't make the cloud be Dropbox. Is that correct? I mean, the cloud is whatever cloud is.
It's their, right. It's
Cloud.
in the case of Zoom, it's their servers and it's their storage location.
Okay. So if I want to save it on my Dropbox, then I'm doing it the right way. It goes to my computer.
Yeah, you have to download it and then re-upload it to the Dropbox area.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Like,
You know.
we don't pay for extra storage for Showtime.
Right.
We save everything. Like right now, this is all going to the cloud. And then as soon as this is over, I'll download them and then I'll delete them. And they don't really delete. They go into a little holding tank for so many days where they're still accessible. But in the meantime, I bring them down to my local drive and then I can manipulate them or put them anywhere I want them. You can get a shareable link from Zoom if you want to leave them there, but you'll start paying for storage at some point to do that.
Right.
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 Or you can get a YouTube account, for example, and
Yeah.
store things for free.
Do you guys ever edit your Zoom recordings?
Yes.
What do you edit your Zoom recordings in?
I don't edit. Zeus is our video editor when we need one, and he uses some proprietary application he has through work to edit them.
Okay.
You know, Karen, talk to Don Griffith because he does all the editing of the videos for the district that get posted to the district YouTube channel.
Yeah. I've used something called OpenShot, which is an open source video editor. So it's a freely available open source solution, which is pretty nice. It allows you to do some basic things. And also, if you use YouTube has some basic things like you can crop the ends and the beginning off, or you can take a slice out. So it has, YouTube itself has an interface to allow you to do some really basic stuff. You're not going to be able to do things like overlay music or things like that. But anyway, that's a couple options.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
That might be available.
Thanks.
Okay.
And if you use Mac, by the way, if you use Apple, I think they have a free tool. Isn't it called Movie?
iMovie. Mm-hmm.
iMovie, yeah. That just comes with their operating system. So a lot of people that do a lot of video work like using Apple.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Hi. I was wondering if you could talk at some point, probably another week, about hybrid meetings. I think you were doing these before all of this total online stuff started. Sorry, where we had some people in the room and some people online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was, and maybe I'll just kind of jump back to, we were we were kind of doing this video conferencing option, and there it's really easy to do if you have a video conferencing system like what you see in the picture there. It looks like a Cisco video conferencing system that's set up in a conference room, and so you just kind of turn it on and then people show up on the big screen on the wall. We were with Showtime kind of piecing this together ourselves. So we had to bring our own cameras, and we had to bring our own screens and projectors, and it was a little complicated to do it. It took a little bit of time to set up each week. But yeah, you can use, and we were using Zoom to do that. So we would just set up one of the systems in the room and had a camera and pointed it to the room versus having it point at one particular participant. And so people, when they joined, would see one of the videos was the room that they would see, and then they would see all the other participants.
And Robin, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say there's other considerations, like you got to make sure you've got the audio set up properly and have microphones in the room so you can hear everybody speak. And so if you don't have a professional video conferencing system, it can be a little challenging.
It's Toastmasters Protocol 2.0, until they reword it anyway, will stipulate that that all the people in the room must be able to see all the participants, and the participants must be able to see all the people in the room. So that meant having to have a camera set up to the front of the room where the Toastmaster and the speakers and the evaluators and stuff would be. But we also had to have a camera that would scan, or that would have a shot of the entire room and get as many faces as we could, so that the remote attendees could see all the people in the room. Now, one of the easiest ways to handle that is some ideas I've gotten from some of the international online clubs. And what they do is they have had people use their phones, iPads, tablets, laptops, whatever, and everybody brings their own device to the meeting and logs into the Zoom separately, so that you get the gallery view with everybody, so that everybody can see everybody. Okay, and then you don't have to do the extra cameras and the screens and stuff like we were doing before. But that means everybody has to have a portable device that they can bring to the meeting and set up, and log in on. And then you only have to have one device with a camera pointed to the front of the room for the activity that goes on in the front of the room.
Yeah, that makes some sense too, although you need lots of electrical outlets, I would think, for all of that.
Well, yeah, or your devices have to be fully charged.
Yes, right.
And there might be some interference with somebody talking and having feedback on another phone.
Right.
Not if everybody manages their mute buttons, carefully, then you can reduce that. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of the devices have echo cancellation capabilities on them to try to mitigate that, but it still can be challenging from an audio perspective.
Yeah. My newer devices would probably handle it very well. My older devices, probably not so well. So,
yeah, and that's why the video conferencing systems are so expensive, because they're tied in with multiple cameras and microphones that are across the room, and they have a lot of echo cancellation and other software that's helping mitigate that, so that the experience is a little bit more seamless. And the company I work for has these on their premise, and they work really nicely, but they're expensive, and not something that a Toastmasters club could probably afford, unless you happen to be meeting at a location that has that type of system that's available to you.
okay, we have hit our maximum time. If everybody is just patient for one moment. Drew, do you have a closing remark?
Oh, I didn't. I just thank you all for participating, and hopefully you got a little bit of insights and how to go about selecting your virtual tools that you may be using. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to
Okay.
see you.
As a reminder, tonight's replay will be posted to our YouTube channel this Friday at 12:15 a.m. You can find Showtime on YouTube using Showtime Toastmasters AZ. For more information about Showtime, please visit us at our website, showtime.toastmastersclubs.org. At this time, I'm going to stop the recording.